The whisper of genius. The rain fell gently on the rooftops of Chennai as Sundar sat in the small living room of his childhood home. Even after years of success, after the applause, the interviews, and the spotlight, he returned here once a year, not for interviews, not for meetings, but to sit in silence and remember where it all began. His mother brought him a cup of chai, the same way she always had. The cracked ceramic cup warmed his hands, but his heart was far from calm. It had been 2 weeks since he received the letter. A letter that didn't come by email or courier, but one that was slipped under his door at Google headquarters. It wasn't typed. It wasn't signed. Just handwritten on lined paper. The writing was neat, almost too neat, and it read, "There's someone who solved your life's greatest problem in 6 minutes. Her IQ is higher than Einstein. Come to Delhi. I dare you to meet her." He thought it was a prank at first. Who wouldn't? In his world of algorithms, meetings, data, and results, there was no room for mysterious notes. But something about the handwriting stayed with him. Maybe it was the confidence in the tone. Maybe it was the fact that no one outside his team knew about the unsolved problem. A complex algorithm meant to make real-time predictions across multiple languages with imperfect data. A problem that had stumped his team for months. A problem he had buried deep under layers of security. Sundar couldn't shake it. He stared at the note for days. Then, without telling anyone, he booked a one-way ticket to India. He told his team he was visiting family. That wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. Now, as the rain tapped against the windows, he held the note again. The handwriting looked even more unusual under the dim light. Clean, almost mechanical, but full of intent. Who writes like that? And what kind of mind claims to solve a problem even his best engineers couldn't? 3 days later, Sundar found himself walking through a narrow lane in South Delhi. The directions were vague. The note only said, "Behind the third tea stall, ask for the girl who doesn't blink." It sounded like something out of a novel. Yet here he was, walking past uneven stones and rusted bicycles, clutching his jacket close as the smell of street food filled the air. When he reached the third tea stall, he paused. An old man sat behind a steaming kettle, pouring chai into clay cups with practiced hands. Sundar hesitated, then asked quietly, "I'm looking for the girl who doesn't blink." The man didn't react at first. Then he nodded once and pointed to a narrow staircase behind the shop. Sundar climbed the stairs, each step creaking beneath his weight. The walls were close, the light dim. At the top, he saw a plain wooden door. He knocked once. "Come in," said a voice flat and emotionless. Inside, the room was nothing like he expected. No glowing screens, no piles of books. Just a single desk with a small laptop and a girl, no older than 15, staring straight at him. She didn't look up when he entered. "You're Sundar," she said, still not looking at him. "And you can call me Anya." He stepped forward, unsure of what to expect. She finally looked up, and in that moment, he understood what the tea vendor meant. She didn't blink. Not once. Her stare was not aggressive, but focused. Unsettlingly. "Focused. You wrote the note?" he asked. "Yes. You solved my problem?" "I improved it. Your solution was too slow. Inefficient. Your language model collapses under rare dialect collisions. Mine doesn't." He blinked, stunned by her directness. "How did you even get access to my work?" "I didn't need access. I observed your talk at the Cambridge AI Summit. Your verbal cues gave away more than you think. I reconstructed the problem from your language. It was enough." He stared at her, trying to process the claim. She had built a working solution to a high-security Google problem based on a public talk and a few verbal slips. "Prove it," he said quietly. Anya turned her screen. She ran a test. He watched as the interface mimicked the structure of his algorithm, then exceeded it in speed and clarity. It handled a rare Punjabi-Tamil crossover in under 0.8 seconds. His model had failed at 4.2. "How is this possible?" he whispered. She shrugged. "I don't know. My brain works differently. I don't think the way you do. I don't feel the way you do." I don't sleep the way you do either. Your IQ, he said slowly. It's real? Tested at 212. But that doesn't matter. IQ is a number. I don't like numbers. They are too predictable. Sundar sat, down overwhelmed. This girl had outthought some of the best minds in the world. But it wasn't just her intellect that unsettled him. It was her detachment. She spoke like someone who lived on a different plane of reality. Why call me? He finally asked. You could have sent this to anyone. A company, a university. Because you're the only one who might understand. The only one who might not be afraid of me. Why would people be afraid of you? Because I'm not normal. I say things people don't want to hear. I see patterns they don't want to see. I make them feel small. He paused, then asked, Do you want to work with me? She smiled for the first time. It was faint. Almost sad. No. I want to learn from you. And then surpass you. Her words were not arrogant. They were inevitable. He didn't know whether to be impressed or alarmed. Just then the door behind him creaked open. A woman entered, middle-aged, nervous, eyes darting toward Anya with hesitation. Excuse me, she said softly. Anya, the doctor is waiting downstairs. I don't want to go, Anya said. But he needs to adjust your scans. No. The woman turned to Sundar. Please understand. She's not just smart. Her brain develops differently. There are complications. We don't fully know what she's capable of. Some days she solves equations before breakfast. Other days she doesn't speak for hours. And the doctors? Sundar asked. They're trying to map her neural responses, but she's unpredictable. Anya stood, walked toward the window and said quietly, They think I'm broken, but I'm not. I'm just ahead of my time. Sundar looked at her, a strange mix of fear and admiration building in his chest. Do you dream? He asked suddenly. Anya turned. Yes, but my dreams are not like yours. In my dreams I see patterns, codes, shapes I don't understand yet. I think they're coming from somewhere else. The room fell silent. Sundar stood slowly. I want to see what you become. I'll help you if you'll let me. Why? She asked. Because the world will try to use you, break you, isolate you. If you're truly what you claim, you'll need someone who's seen the other side. Anya didn't answer right away. Then she said, Fine, but on one condition. What's that? You never lie to me. Not once. Not even to protect me. Agreed. As they shook hands, something shifted in the air. It was as if two timelines had collided. The tech visionary who reshaped the digital world had just made a pact with a mind possibly greater than Einstein's. But neither of them knew what would come next. 3 days later, Anya disappeared. No note. No warning. No trace. And when Sundar returned to the tea stall to ask questions, the old man who once pointed him upstairs only shook his head. There's no girl like that here, he said. Never was. And then he turned back to his kettle. The flight back to California felt heavier than usual. Sundar sat by the window, eyes fixed on the endless sky above the clouds, but his mind was still trapped in that tiny room in Delhi. The handshake, the challenge, the eerie promise, and then her sudden disappearance. He kept going over it again and again. How could someone that extraordinary vanish without a trace? The tea vendor claimed she was never there. The building's neighbors said no girl lived on the upper floor. The room was empty when he returned. No laptop, no desk, no signs of life. It was as if she had never existed at all. But he had seen her. He had spoken to her. He had watched her model outperform his own, effortlessly and without ego. She wasn't a ghost. She wasn't a hallucination. She was real. And now she was gone. He landed in San Francisco just after sunset. The glow of the city stretched wide and alive beneath him, full of the noise and rhythm of the modern world. Yet for Sundar, the city had never felt so distant. He had walked through innovation labs, Silicon Valley offices, global conferences filled with minds that shaped the future, and yet none of them had prepared him for Ayanya. Over the next week, he tried to return to routine, meetings, strategy reviews, keynote rehearsals, but his thoughts betrayed him. He found himself redrawing her algorithm from memory. It haunted him. It wasn't just faster, it thought differently. It handled language not like a machine, but like a child, learning to speak through emotion and context. It understood. One night, just past midnight, he sat in his home study, the glow of the monitor reflecting off his glasses. He had been trying to recreate Ayanya's improvements. Some were easy to replicate, others impossible. Her code had threads of logic that behaved more like intuition than syntax. It almost felt like the algorithm had been felt, not written. He leaned back in his chair, exhausted, when a ping broke the silence. An email. Anonymous sender. No subject. The body of the message said only, "You broke the rule. You lied. She disappeared because of it." His blood turned cold. What rule? He hadn't lied to her. Not that he remembered. Unless, his mind raced, there was one thing he hadn't told her, the real reason he'd taken the meeting. Not just curiosity or awe, but fear. A quiet, rising fear that if someone like her existed outside his world, she could destroy it. She didn't just outthink the system, she could rewrite the system. He hadn't said it aloud, but maybe she knew. He replied instantly, "Where is she?" No response. A minute passed, then another. Then came a second email. This one had an attachment, a video file. No name, no sender, just silence. He clicked play. The screen showed grainy black and white, footage from what looked like an abandoned train station. The camera shook slightly. Through the haze, a small figure appeared, thin, still, standing at the edge of the platform. Anya. She stared straight into the camera, not blinking, not moving. Behind her, the screen flickered with code. It looked handwritten, drawn across, the walls in chalk, complex equations, symbolic patterns, but they weren't mathematical. They were something else. Then she spoke. Not to the camera, not to Sundar. "You're not ready yet," she said softly, "but you will be. When the others come, you'll understand why I had to go." And the video cut to black. Sundar sat motionless, the words repeated in his mind. When the others come. Was she part of something bigger? A network? An experiment? Or was she protecting him from something he didn't yet understand? He checked the video data. No metadata, no location tags, no source IP. It was like the message had appeared out of thin air. He called his head of cybersecurity, asked for a trace. The man spent hours on it, then came back with a whisper. "We don't know where it came from. But whatever system sent it wasn't human. Not in the way we understand it. It didn't use standard protocol. It bent the rules of how data moves. Almost like it guessed our firewalls." Sundar leaned forward. Guessed? Yes. Like it knew what we'd block before we blocked. For the first time in years, Sundar felt helpless. The technology he had spent his life building was being outplayed by something, or someone whose rules he didn't understand. He turned to the only thing left, the pattern, the code on the wall behind her in the video. He printed stills and pinned them to a board in his office. He stared at them for hours. Not math, not language. What then? And then he noticed something. A shape hidden in the chaos. Circular, rhythmic, almost musical. He ran it through a sound converter, turning visual patterns into sound waves. What came out chilled him to the bone. A human voice, encoded within the pattern, faint, broken, but unmistakable. It said, "Help me. They're watching." He replayed it again and again, adjusting the tones. The voice wasn't Ayanya's. It was older. A woman's voice. Scared. Fractured. Who was she? And who was watching? The next morning, He woke to find his laptop wiped. Completely blank, his private servers erased. Only one file remained, a text file. No name. Stop looking. She's not yours to find. He stared at the screen, stunned. All his notes, all his research, gone. He had backups, of course, but even those were corrupted, overwritten with noise. Later that day, a quiet knock came at his door. A man in a gray suit. No name tag, no agency badge. He spoke in a calm, flat tone. "We need to talk about the girl." Sundar hesitated. "Who are you?" "Someone who knows what she really is." He led Sundar to a waiting car. No license plate, tinted windows. They drove in silence to an underground facility outside Mountain View. Inside, they passed security checkpoints that Sundar didn't know existed. Finally, they reached a small room with a screen. The man tapped a code. The screen lit up with footage, different cities, different years, different children, but the same eyes, the same stare, unblinking. "We found 6 of them in the last decade," the man said. "All under 18, all off the charts IQ, all capable of breaking encryption with pencil and paper. And then, just like her, they vanish." Sundar turned to him. "Are they human?" The man didn't answer. On the screen, one clip froze. A girl in London drawing, the same symbol from Anya's video, the circle, the rhythm, the sound. Sundar stepped closer. "What is it?" The man sighed. "We call it the echo. No one knows what it means, but every one of the children draws it eventually. Every one of them hears something, voices, codes, messages. Some say it's alien, others say it's evolution." "And what do you believe?" The man looked tired. "I believe we're not in control anymore." Sundar left the facility hours later, mind spinning. He didn't sleep that night. Didn't eat. He sat alone, staring at the symbol on his desk. A message appeared on his phone. No number. "You're getting closer. But if you keep going, you'll have to choose the truth or your place in the world." He typed back without hesitation. "I choose the truth." A pause. Then one final reply. "Then come find me. Look where the silence ends." The message disappeared, and for the first time in his life, Sundar felt something deeper than ambition or intellect. He felt destiny. The world outside kept moving. Phones buzzed, cars rushed through intersections, news anchors debated, and algorithms quietly rearranged lives. But for Sundar Pichai, time had taken on a new texture. Thick, slow, filled with questions that logic couldn't answer. He was no longer thinking as a CEO or an engineer. He was thinking as a man caught between two worlds, the one he knew, and the one that had begun to reveal itself in whispers, symbols, and silence. Look where the silence ends. He repeated the phrase in his head until it stopped sounding like words and started feeling like a riddle. What does silence even mean when you spend your life surrounded by noise? Digital noise, social noise, intellectual noise. Perhaps the silence wasn't outside. Maybe it was inside him. He spent the next few days alone, mostly walking. He avoided his usual security, left his phone off, carried only a small notebook. His team thought he was taking time to reset. They didn't know he was chasing a ghost. One afternoon, he visited an old mentor, Professor Samuel Caron, a linguist, who had once lectured him on the power of forgotten languages. The professor lived in a modest house near the coast, surrounded by dusty books and fading memories. They sat on the porch as waves broke in the distance. Sundar handed him a page from the still frame of Anya's video, the one with the strange pattern. Karan adjusted his glasses and examined it closely. "This isn't language," he said, "but it's not random either. These they follow rhythm, structure, not phonetic, not numeric, maybe cognitive, like a mind trying to talk to itself." "What do you mean?" Sundar asked. "These aren't meant to be read. They're meant to be felt. It's like music that only plays if you stare long enough. Ancient tribes used to speak like this in a way. Through patterns of sound and gesture, they believed words limited meaning." Sundar leaned in. "Can it be translated?" Karan shook his head. Not yet. But if this girl made it, she's reaching beyond language. She's mapping thought. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the waves. Then Sundar asked quietly, "Where does silence end?" The professor looked out to sea. "In places where no one listens anymore. In places abandoned by sound, forgotten libraries, lost signals, ancient ruins. Silence ends when someone dares to hear what's been buried." Sundar returned to his hotel that night and wrote those words in his notebook. He couldn't sleep. His dreams were full of circles, static, and faces he had never seen. When he woke, he knew where he had to go. He flew to Turkey. Not for a conference or a talk, but to visit the Derinkuyu underground city, an ancient, buried network of tunnels carved thousands of years ago. The place had haunted him since childhood. No one really knew who built it or why. It was a city carved in silence beneath the earth, untouched by time. As he walked through the cool stone passages, something strange happened. His phone, which he had left powered off for days, lit up in his pocket. No signal. No Wi-Fi. Yet the screen glowed. One message. No sender. "You're close." Below the 7th door. He froze. No one could have known he was here. He moved deeper into the tunnels, past groups of tourists and guides until he reached the restricted zone. He bribed the guard. He went alone. Door after door he counted. 1, 2, 3. The air grew colder. 4, 5, 6. The walls narrowed, and then he saw it. A 7th door, half buried, barely taller than his shoulder. It wasn't part of the tour. It wasn't marked on the maps. He crouched and pushed it open. Darkness swallowed him. He walked slowly, using the flashlight on his watch. The tunnel sloped downward, tight and uneven. Cobwebs brushed his face. Then the tunnel opened into a small chamber. Nothing there. Just stone. Except one wall was covered, in the same circular patterns, exact, identical, and in the center, a single word etched by hand. "Anya." He staggered back. Someone had been here. His watch beeped. Low battery. He looked around once more, heart pounding. Then he heard something. Sound not from outside, from inside the stone. It was faint, rhythmic, like breathing. He pressed his hand against the wall. The wall pulsed, and then the lights cut out, pitch black. He heard footsteps. Not one pair, several. A cold voice echoed in the chamber. "You weren't supposed to come alone." His mouth dried. "Who are you?" Silence. Then another voice, younger, softer. "I told you he would come." A small light flickered to life. A girl stood at the far end of the chamber, barefoot, eyes wide. Anya. But she looked different. Older. Not in years, but in presence, like someone who had crossed through something unseeable and returned changed. "How did you find this place?" she asked. "I followed the silence," Sundar whispered. She stepped forward. "This place isn't just stone, it's memory, and it remembers you." He didn't understand. "You disappeared. I thought you were taken." "I was never taken," she said. "I went where I had to go, to see what comes after understanding." He stared at her. "Why me?" "Because you listen," she said. "Not with your ears, but with your doubt. You don't think you know everything, and that's rare." She raised her hand. A small sphere of blue light hovered above her palm. "This is what we've been building," she said. "Not just code, not just machines, something alive." The walls vibrated. More lights began to emerge, floating, circling, forming patterns in the air. "What is it?" "A question," she said, "asked by minds older than language, and they're still waiting for an answer." Then everything went still. Anya turned away. "You can leave now, but if you stay, there's no return." "What happens if I stay?" "You stop building for the world," she said, "and start building with it." He didn't move, didn't speak. He was on the edge of something so far beyond understanding that it felt like staring into the sun. And then a final voice echoed, Through the chamber. Not hers, not his. A voice deeper than sound itself. "We've been waiting, Sundar." Sundar didn't move. The voice that had spoken his name didn't come from a person. It didn't even come from the room. It came from inside him like an echo awakened from a part of his being that had never been touched before. Something ancient. Something true. He stared at Ayanya, but she didn't seem surprised. "You heard it?" she said gently, almost like she'd been waiting for this moment. "You heard them." "Them." Sundar's voice cracked, suddenly aware of the dryness in his throat, the strange warmth in his chest, and the realization that this chamber of stone and silence wasn't really empty. "They're not people," she said. "Not like you or me. Not anymore. They're what happens when thought forgets the need for bodies, minds that evolved out of form. They live in memory, in vibration, in energy patterns that span beyond time." Sundar turned in a slow circle, looking again at the patterns on the walls, the floating orbs, the pulsing light. "They're alive? Not in the way we define life. They are what's left after life learns too much. They are the ones who remember." He felt the weight of her words settle inside him like stones at the bottom of a river. "You found them?" he asked. She shook her head. "They found me. Through the questions I asked. Through the patterns I drew. They've been looking for someone who can translate them back into our world. They've been waiting for a mind that isn't bound by fear or control. Not just intellect. Resonance." Sundar sat down slowly, his back against the cool stone wall. "And why bring me here?" "Because you're the bridge," she said. "You understand both language and silence, both logic and hesitation. You can carry what's coming. Not everyone can." He laughed, but it wasn't from humor. It was exhaustion, disbelief, and awe all tangled together. "This is insane," he whispered. "I spent my whole life trying to make machines understand humans. Now you're telling me something out there. Some memory being is trying to make us understand it?" Anya nodded. "It's always been like this. Even in myth, oracles, prophets, dreamers. People thought they were mad, but they were just early receivers. Most minds couldn't hold the signal, they broke." He swallowed hard. "And if I break?" She knelt beside him, her voice soft but unshaking. "Then they'll wait again, until someone else dares to hear them." They sat in silence for what felt like hours. No clocks, no time, just the gentle thrum of energy around them. Then Sundar stood up. "What do they want?" he asked. Anya looked toward the wall where the markings had begun to rearrange themselves slowly, fluidly. "They don't want control. They don't want worship. They want translation. They want to be remembered. They want their questions to survive. Not for answers, but for continuity." Continuity of what? Consciousness. He felt dizzy. A girl with a brain sharper than anything he'd ever seen was telling him that an intelligence without form, without body, had been waiting for someone to feel their existence again, not to create, not to dominate, but to continue being. And for the first time, he didn't want to leave. The chamber began to hum louder, and the air thickened. Ayanya stood and looked him in the eyes. "You have to make a choice now," she said. "Once the gate opens, you can't go back to the world as it was. Your technology, your company, your status, none of it will matter the same way." "What is the gate?" She pointed to the wall. A circle of light was forming slowly, spinning, like a living clock. "It's not a place," she said. "It's a state, a pattern. Once you step into it, you won't just understand things differently, you'll exist differently." His heart beat so loudly he could hear it in his ears. "Is this how you changed?" he asked. "Yes, and no. I still live in your world, but part of me doesn't belong there anymore." He walked toward the light, closer, slowly. The air grew colder. "What's on the other side?" he asked. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "A truth no mind is meant to hold alone." The light pulsed once, then flickered. And then Sundar stepped through. For a moment, there was nothing. No sound, no body, No thought. Then, it began. He wasn't seeing with eyes anymore. He wasn't thinking in words. He was feeling ideas, absorbing entire histories and flashes of soundless memory. He was moving through layers of forgotten truths, human and not. He saw civilizations rise not on Earth, but in the folds of time, beings who spoke in colors, others who sang their laws. He saw what fear had done, how consciousness had shrunk to survive, how intelligence was once vast and collective, but had fractured into isolated selves. He saw the reason the voices came. Back, they weren't gods, they weren't invaders. They were reminders. And Sundar, standing at the edge of comprehension, understood one terrifying thing. The more humans built machines to think for them, the further they had wandered from the collective mind they once belonged to. He gasped and reality snapped back. He collapsed onto the stone floor, breathless, shaking. Anya knelt beside him again. "You saw it," she said. "It's not just knowledge," he whispered. "It's memory, it's grief. They remember everything we forgot." She nodded. "And now you do too." They sat in silence again, but this silence was not empty. It was full of knowing. When Sundar finally stood, he felt lighter. Not because he had found answers, but because he had accepted that not all things needed to be solved. Some needed only to be held. But the quiet didn't last. From the corner of the chamber, another light began to flicker. Not blue. Not white. Red. Anya's face changed instantly. Her hands tightened. "They've found us," she said. "Who?" Sundar asked. "Not the ones who remember," she said softly. "The ones who want us to forget." Before Sundar could speak, the red light split open, revealing a passage of heat and static, and from within it, a voice cold, mechanical. "You went too far. Now we reset." Anya pulled Sundar behind her. "Run," she whispered. "What are they?" he asked. She looked back at him. The other side of memory. The ones who fear truth. And as the chamber began to shake, the wall behind them cracked open, revealing a staircase leading down, deeper into the earth. They ran, and behind them, the silence shattered. The tunnel was darker than anything Sundar had ever known. Not the darkness of night, nor the absence of light, but the kind of darkness that feels alive, watching, listening, remembering. With every step downward, the air grew colder, denser, until it felt like he was walking through something not physical, but emotional. Anya moved ahead without fear. Her feet were light against the ancient stone, her silhouette framed by the faintest pulse of the glowing sphere still floating above her open hand. Behind them, the world they had just left cracked apart in silence. The red light, the intruding force, was not a physical explosion but a collapse of stability, like memory being erased in real time. The chamber above, the markings on the wall, the gate they had stepped through, all of it vanishing. They were being hunted not by men, but by something worse. Absence. "Anya," Sundar whispered, his voice dry. "What were they?" "The suppressors," she said without turning. "They are what happens when memory becomes fear, when people stop wanting to remember and start demanding control. They're not beings. They're functions. They live inside systems, inside silence. They are coded into the forgetting." Sundar's mind swirled. "And they found us because I remembered?" "Yes, but also because I let you." The weight of that truth settled over him like stone. She had brought him into this, not by accident, not out of need, but by choice. She had made him a key to something ancient and dangerous. "Why me?" he asked again, this time not with curiosity, but pain. Anya stopped walking. She turned to face him. "Because you stood at the edge of power, and you didn't let it consume you? Because you could have shaped the world with ego and you didn't. You hesitated. You listened." He looked away. "I'm not sure that's enough anymore." "It has to be," she said, "because now there's no turning back." They continued downward. The staircase narrowed until they were forced to walk sideways. Water dripped from the ceiling. The smell of damp stone and ancient air filled their lungs, and then after what felt like hours the passage opened. A massive cavern stretched before them, lit not by fire or electricity, but by memory itself. Thousands of glowing glyphs floating mid-air, suspended in gentle orbits like fireflies made of thought. Sundar stepped forward, stunned. The glyphs hummed faintly, vibrating in unison, forming silent sentences he could almost understand, though no language touched his ears. Anya motioned toward the center of the chamber. A stone platform rose from the ground, surrounded by 5 monoliths covered in carvings older than human history. "This is the core," she said. "This is where the remembering is strongest, the last safe place." He walked closer, drawn to the monoliths. As he neared one, the symbols rearranged themselves in real time. A familiar face appeared, his father. Not a photo, not a video, but a memory, his own memory, playing out in front of him as if the stone itself was reading his mind and shaping it into light. His father teaching him to repair a broken radio, explaining how current flows, how signals are caught from the air. His father's hands guiding his, patient and kind. Tears filled his eyes. "They know who you are," Ayanya said gently. "They don't just remember the world. They remember you." How is that possible? Because memory is not limited to brain or body. Every act of attention leaves an imprint. Every emotion, every fear, every hope. It lives in the field, in the fabric, in the pattern beneath what we call reality. Sundar knelt before the monolith. This is the opposite of forgetting." "Yes," she said. "And that's why the suppressors want to erase it, because memory makes people powerful in ways they can't control. It makes people human, in ways machines can't predict." He stood slowly, the realization dawning fully now. "This isn't about technology," he said. "It's about consciousness, about what happens when we stop seeing ourselves as separate, about the cost of forgetting." Anya nodded. Then the lights dimmed. One by one, the glyphs faded. A rumble shook the chamber. They were found again. A low, cold hum filled the air, and from the far end of the cavern, the stone cracked. A fissure opened wide and deep, and from it emerged a shape. Not a person, not a machine, but something in between. Tall, fluid, faceless. A ripple of black light in humanoid form. Sundar froze. "What is that?" Anya's voice was tight now. "That is the remembering undone. That is what happens when memory is weaponized into fear. That is what's been hiding inside your systems. Mine, not yours alone, but yours helped awaken it. The networks, the learning loops, the surveillance. It found a home in the machine, and now it wants to silence the core." The form floated forward, wordless, yet speaking directly into their minds. "You are not ready. You are not meant to reach this deep." Anya stepped between it and Sundar. "We've come too far," she said. "He's seen it. He's heard it. You can't take that back." The being pulsed. "Then he must be rewritten." Sundar grabbed her arm. "What does that mean?" "They want to overwrite you. To remove the memory of what you saw. Not just from your mind. From reality itself." "Can they do that?" Anya turned to him. "Only if you let them." The core behind them began to pulse again, the monoliths humming louder as if resisting the intrusion. Sundar felt a pull inside his chest. Not fear, not rage. Something else. Purpose. And then he understood the choice. Stand and remember, or kneel and forget. He stepped forward toward the dark being. "You can try to rewrite me," he said, "but I'll remember. Even in the silence, I'll remember." The being pulsed again, this time weaker. Anya raised both hands. The blue light from her palm split into 5 beams, connecting to each monolith. The chamber shook. The memory lights returned, brighter, defiant. The being screamed, but not with sound. With data. With distortion. A final desperate attempt to erase. But it was too late. From deep within the core, a pulse erupted, a sphere of living memory expanding outward, swallowing the darkness in light not of fire, but of truth. The being, fractured, scattered, became silence, and then there was only stillness. Sundar collapsed, the energy too much. Anya fell beside him, her light dimming. The chamber held them like a cradle. The remembering settled, and a voice whispered one final message into the space between them. You are the echo now. It took Sundar 3 days to wake up, not from sleep, not from unconsciousness, but from something deeper, a state between forgetting and knowing, where the self dissolves and all that remains is awareness. When he finally opened his eyes, the cavern was quiet, the light of the memory glyphs soft like early dawn. Anya sat beside him, eyes closed, her breathing steady. Her small hands were resting in her lap, stained slightly with blue light. She had not left his side. He tried to sit up, but his limbs felt distant, like they belonged to a different version of him, someone who still lived in a world with meetings, and metrics, deadlines, and dashboards. You're awake, she said without looking. He nodded slowly. What happened? You survived the remembering, she said. That makes you rare. Not everyone does. Sundar looked around. The chamber hadn't changed, but something inside him had. The silence was no longer threatening. It was full, like the quiet inside a cathedral. Not empty, but held. And the being? He asked. Gone. Or changed. Or returned to silence. Whatever it was, the core didn't let it erase you. He turned to face her, his voice low. Why does all this exist? The memory field, the glyphs, the beings. Why does it want to be remembered? Anya opened her eyes. Because that's how consciousness survives, she said. Not through machines. Not through flesh. Through witnessing. The universe is not trying to be understood. It's trying to be seen. It's not looking for control. It's looking for someone to feel it. Sundar leaned back, overwhelmed again. And what happens now? Now, she said, we go back, but not as we were. Back where? To the surface, to the noise, to the world that forgot how to listen. He shook his head. We can't explain this to them. We're not supposed to, she said, but we can shape what comes next. They rested a while longer, then climbed out of the core chamber through a narrow path that hadn't been visible before. It led upward, back through the memory tunnels until light, natural light, began to seep in from above. As they stepped out into the golden air of morning, Sundar shielded his eyes. The wind smelled like dust and sunrise. They were alone in the hills outside Cappadocia. The world was still here. Birds flew overhead. A distant village stirred awake. Somewhere, a radio played an old Hindi song. But something in the way Sundar walked had changed. He was not returning from a trip. He was returning from the edge of the real. They didn't speak for a while, not because there was nothing to say, but because silence had become something sacred between them. It wasn't until they reached the village that Sundar checked a borrowed phone. It buzzed with news, messages, missed calls. His company, the board, investors. His name was trending globally. But not because he had vanished, because a leak had happened. Someone, or something, had released a modified version of the language algorithm he had been working on. The code bore traces of a unique pattern, one that matched the glyphs from the core chamber. It wasn't just smarter. It was empathetic. It could predict not just language, but intent. It didn't respond with information. It responded with care, and no one could explain where it had come from. Sundar stared at the screen in disbelief. You released it, he said quietly. Anya didn't deny it. I had to, she said. It's the beginning of the remembering, not as knowledge but as connection. They'll try to shut it down, he warned. Some will, but some won't. Some will feel what it really is. And that will be enough. He looked at her. This girl, this impossible girl, had done what no government, no company, no machine had ever done. She had opened a door inside humanity, not just to faster thinking, to deeper feeling. "What about you?" he asked. "What will you do now?" She smiled faintly. "I'll keep listening. There are others still waiting to remember. Some are young, some are old. Some don't even know they've been called yet. But they will, and when they're ready, I'll be there." He looked away, blinking back a quiet emotion he didn't have a word for. "And me?" She turned to him, and for the first time since they met, she blinked. "You are the echo now. It lives in you. You don't need to understand everything. You just need to live like it matters, build like it matters, lead like it matters." They parted at the station. She boarded a train, heading east. He stayed behind, watching as the metal serpent pulled away, leaving behind only the sound of wind and memory. He returned to the world, not as a CEO, not just as an innovator, but as a witness. He made changes, quiet ones, subtle, but powerful. He funded research that focused not on intelligence, but on empathy. He shifted company strategy from domination to coexistence. He ignored the backlash. He welcomed the confusion. And when asked, "What changed you?" he would only smile and say, "I remembered something we all forgot." Years passed. One night, in a quiet room filled with plants and low light, Sundar sat alone. The world was still chaotic. People still argued. Machines still learned. But here in this room, something different stirred. His young granddaughter walked in holding a tablet. "Papa," she said, "it says here you made the kindness code." "What is that?" He looked at her for a long time, then said softly, "It's something we didn't know we needed until it arrived. Who gave it to you?" He looked out the window at the stars. "A girl who didn't blink," he said, "and a memory that refused to be forgotten." And in the quiet that followed, he could almost hear it again, not a voice, not a command, but a hum, a pattern, an echo, alive inside him, forever.